right, everybody. Welcome in to another episode of the NFL Seekers podcast. Today, we're coming at you with our top 10 tight end rankings, finishing out our fantasy football rankings. It's been super fun. We've got a jam-packed episode today. We've got our top 10 rankings. We got some honorable mentions. We've got our favorite dart throws slash gems slash sleepers that we're super excited to talk about. So a lot of tight end talk today for our one and only tight end episode for a while until closer to the draft season. So, how are your stores? How was your weekend?
Doing good. You think we live in Arizona here, Dan, in Utah, because it feels like 100 degrees with blowing hot winds. So, other than the extreme heat, I'm doing good. I'm excited to talk tight ends. It's one of the most frustrating positions in all of fantasy. It's the position you have to get right, or you're going to be at a disadvantage the entire year trying to, flex, tight ends in and out of your lineups week in, week out. But overall, doing good. Excited to talk about these guys.
Yeah, tight ends are really fun. I feel like this year, especially, there's so much value at the tight end position. So I am really excited to talk about these guys, some of the sleeper guys. And let's just get right into it. We'll start it off with our number one tight end, someone that there isn't too much value in, but that is Sam Laporta, everyone's number one tight end, finishes the number one last year as a rookie out of Iowa. Our number one tight end for the NFL Seekers, my number one tight end, Stores' number one tight end, everyone's number one tight end. He averaged 14.1 points per game last year in his historic rookie season. Josh Reynolds is leaving. He might get even more red zone targets, could boost those points that he had last year. I want to ask you two questions. First, you can answer these at the same time, but is he the best rookie tight end ever? I feel like that's a interesting discussion that I've kind of been asking myself. Like production wise, is he the best rookie tight end ever? And then second, are you comfortable taking him where he's currently going as a 24th overall pick? For a reference, Mark Andrews is going as a 48th overall pick. So he's going first, or I guess second round, third round. He's going really, really high. So I want to hear your thoughts on Sam Laporta.
So yes and yes to both of those because I mean, yes, he historically really had one of the best tight end seasons ever. He finished as the tight end one, correct, and averaged the most points per game. So I mean, what he did was nothing short of incredible. I mean, scoring 10 plus touchdowns and having almost 900 yards and 86 receptions in a rookie season is incredible. And he was Jared Goff's safety net blanket. I mean, and yes, I'll just shift over real quick on how high I would draft him. Yes, I would draft him. He's going at the 14 right now.
He's
What is
going
that?
24th overall. That might be a little low. I see him going a little bit higher sometimes, but he's going, second round pretty much.
Okay, I'm on a different wavelength because I was just talking to you right before this that I was probably honestly feel. I mean, there's a new sheriff in town. Think about how high Travis Kelce has been going the last couple of years. I think Sam Laporta can match and outpace Travis Kelce's previous fantasy seasons because, like you said, Josh Reynolds deports. You got Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta. I don't think Jameson Williams is going to be, itching and fighting for much, in that target share. There's just not a lot of good receivers. So they're really running it back with Laporta and Amon-Ra St. Brown. And you tell me who the wide receiver one is, because it could be either one in each week. But Sam Laporta, the level of consistency you're going to get out of him, he gets to run it back with Ben Johnson. Tanner Inkstead stayed in Detroit too. So he just gets to run it back with the same offense in what am I trying to say? In back-to-back years, where, as you come in as a rookie, as a tight end, it's really hard because you're blocking and catching. And so most tight ends don't do that good. And Sam Laporta just hit the ground running. And he's only going to go into year two, just familiar and comfortable with the system. So I just expect an even bigger year. And yes, I think you draft him super high. I think, I would feel comfortable saying this. I mean, you could probably realistically get him in the middle end of the second round, but I wouldn't even be mad if you took him, say in a 12 team PPR league at the 112 at the 2-1. I'm not feeling too scared about that because I think he's gonna prove his production.
All right. Stores is putting his flag in the ground. He's absolutely pounding the table for Sam Laporta. I respect it. I definitely do. He's insane. I agree. You could argue he's their wide receiver one with Amon-Ra. It's interchangeable between the two. Those are the two that make that offense go. Ben Johnson schemes Sam Laporta beautifully. It felt like every week He had a schemed up touchdown where he was just wide open, catching it from Jared Goff. So I do love the player, Sam Laporta. It's priced into his ADP though. Like I'm just gonna be honest, I'm on the other side. I said it earlier at the top. I love a lot of the value at tight end this year. I don't really want to take my tight end in the second round when I can get, Mark Andrews at 48, 24 picks later, then a Sam Laporta. And I love Sam Laporta, but man, that just seems so rich. And he actually was second in points per game behind Travis Kelce and TJ Hockenson, who were tied at first, so third technically. And yeah, I don't know. It's a hard discussion because obviously the player's insane. You have to rank him as tight end one. But at the same time, I think personally, I'm gonna not find myself drafting him too much, just with that huge ADP. So it looks like we're a little bit split on this one, even though he is our tight end one.
There's a new sheriff in town. And I am planting my flag on him. So, two different ways to look at this, but I am super excited for Sam Laporta.
And I do like what you said about him probably taking over that Travis Kelce role. And Travis Kelce's been going second round for the last 5, 10 years. So I definitely do what you see, or I do see what you're saying, kind of foreseeing a huge season for Sam Laporta. And with that, do you want to go on to our tight end two, who we're kind of talking about already?
Yes, sir. Let's get on into it.
All right, moving on to our tight end two, Mr. Travis Kelce, the one, the only. Travis Kelce is being drafted as a consensus tight end two. He's our tight end two, my tight end two, Stores' tight end two. Same with Laporta. We're right on consensus with the first two tight ends here, but just wait. Our next three tight ends are going to be a very interesting discussion. We're all over the place on those rankings. But Travis Kelce, 14.6 points per game last year. Surprisingly, was the most of any tight end for points per game. He was tied with TJ Hockenson. And that is surprising because I drafted him in the first round and it felt like it was a struggle of a season. It felt like a struggle bus. He was really inconsistent, had too many weeks under 10 points. And, the beginning of the season was rough. He really picked it up at the end of the year, though. It felt like the Chiefs kind of started trying more at the end of the year and definitely focalized Travis Kelce more. So it will be interesting to see how this year goes with Travis Kelce. Like I said, I drafted him in the first round last year. The thing is with him is he's going as a 35th overall pick this year. I mean, 34th, 35th overall pick. That's round 3 or 4. That's kind of another thing to back up my Laporta argument. I think I would maybe just rather have Travis Kelce a round or two later. I know that's honestly kind of hard because Laporta could be a lot better, but I like that value. I think that's acceptable value. That's the lowest premium we've had to pay for a guy like Travis Kelce in a long time. So I do like the value. You got Patrick Mahomes thrown to him. I could see a little bit of a regression past that tight end two spot. Maybe the receivers coming in, Hollywood Brown, the rookie Xavier Worthy kind of take some targets away. I'm not too worried though. I think he still will be the focal point of the offense, the wide receiver one for the Chiefs. And I think it's kind of the same old, and you're just getting meta value.
100%. I mean, he is being drafted at an extreme value rate. And last year was frustrating. I mean, for fantasy owners last year, he did take a dip in production. And it kind of did feel like it was his age kind of catching up to him to a certain extent, kind of like you said. But I mean, he goes from 152 targets to 121, and then goes from 110 receptions to 93. And then his touchdowns get cut in more than, I mean, over half. I mean, he went from 12 touchdowns in 2022 to 5 touchdowns in 2023. So fantasy owners definitely felt it. Travis Kelce was being drafted very rich last year. And we were seeing Travis Kelce in some leagues go as high as, anywhere from 3 to 5. And so from that standpoint, it was disappointing. But I mean, he was very boomer bust last year. It seemed like in games, it seems like you got a big game from Travis Kelce, or he was just kind of quiet and getting shut down. And like you called him last year, it was the run first Chiefs, and people were upset. But all that does is just, it's still Travis Kelce. He's still going to get his. He's still the best receiver in that offense. He's still Mahomes' favorite target. And so now people are going to be getting him at a value. I mean, at 34 is an incredible value. So, I mean, if he falls to that, I mean, you better be spam, because you're getting a wide receiver one at a position that you don't get wide receiver ones at.
Yeah, absolutely. And he is going to be 35 this season. So do keep in mind that he will be 35. He does have some more receiving options coming in. They could maybe want to be the run first Chiefs again for the first half of the season. So there is some variables that do scare me a little bit with Travis Kelce. I think it's safe to say he will regress again. Like you said, he's regressed pretty largely from the year prior to last year. So I do think there's a little bit of a regression, but it will be pretty similar. He finishes tight end 3. I think he finishes as a top 3 tight end. So I do think our ranking is warranted. Anything else you want to say on this legend?
I mean, do we want to like kind of clump these guys into tiers? I mean, would we say this is kind of our first tier? I feel like these two are kind of a little bit above everyone else. So I mean, I'm kind of putting Laporta and Kelce into their own tier.
Yeah, you can definitely look at it like these first two are definitely in their own tier. No one, I mean, you could put them in their own specific tier for each of them, just
Yeah.
because no one's really arguing. We're with the consensus on this one. They're being drafted, by themselves. So I do agree with that. And let's go on to our next three because this discussion is going to be really interesting. We've got three guys at a three-way tie from 3 to 5. So you could say that this is all one tier, the next three guys that we're going to be talking about. But first, we will be talking about our tight end 3 due to the math and the tiebreakers. It does come down to Trey McBride, someone the stores really loves. He's the consensus ADP tight end 3, so that is what brings up his average to the NFL seekers tight end 3. I just said RB 3. He will be the tight end 3 for the NFL seekers. My tight end 5 stores as tight end 3 and the consensus tight end 3. So really, really polarizing discussion. He had an insane season last year. Once Kyler got back, they had an insane connection. And I want to hear why he's your number 3 tight end.
Oh, I mean, just plain and simple because he was their best wide receiver last year. I mean, he demanded all the targets when him and Kyler were both healthy and both on the field when Kyler got back. I mean, that's when his target share incredibly jumped up. I mean, he had 106 targets with 81 receptions on 825 yards and only 3 touchdowns. And so you hope you see that. But almost to an extent, he was their best player. He was the guy being watched and guarded week in and week out. And so you add a Marvin Harrison Jr. to this offense, and I think that only benefits him because the focus and the double teams are going to be on Marvin Harrison Jr. because he is such a freak athlete out there, and teams are going to have to game plan him, which is just going to leave Trey McBride for just almost the same target share, if not more, with I think more red zone opportunities. And last year was kind of his breakout year. 2022 was his rookie season. He was just kind of, he's not a household name. He's kind of a nobody. And he just really exploded onto the scene. And, Kyler gaining that trust, it's going to be a safety net. And, I just don't see any of those targets going away from him.
Yeah, so this is our 3A tight end, and I do fully agree with that. He's an awesome player. I loved him coming out of Colorado State. He's a great security blanket. He's really athletic, good at getting open. He's going to be a touchdown machine. I think the touchdowns will definitely go up this year. I will just say, though, I am on the other side. As you see, he is my tight end 5. It's all really close. These three guys really are on the same tier, but I do simply just see a regression with Marvin Harrison. If not a regression, it'll be just similar to last year. And he did only average 10.7 points per game last year, which wasn't, the most exciting. And it was really a fantastic season for him, too. I feel like it was almost a best case scenario season when Kyler came back. He was just completely force feeding Trey McBride. I know he didn't start the season off as like the main target or anything, but I do think that 10.7 points per game scares me off a little bit compared to the other two guys in this tier. Nothing against him. I do think the targets won't be as consistent with Marvin coming in, though, and with the offense kind of changing. I do think that the two guys in this tier, Dalton Kincaid and Mark Andrews, are kind of the wide receiver 1 on their teams, and that is just literally the tiebreaker of why I have Trey McBride behind the two is because Marvin Harrison comes in. I do think that Mark Andrews is going to be wide receiver 1 over Zay Flowers. I think Kincaid will be wide receiver 1 over Keon Coleman, whoever they have over there. So yeah, I do think I am just a little bit lower on Trey McBride. I might not be drafting him this year. If he falls, I definitely will because, like I said, I have him in the same tier. I love the player. I traded for him in Dynasty with you. I made the trade because I do love the player. I totally believe in him. He's young. He's awesome. He's a PPR machine. If you have a full point PPR league, maybe you do put him as the number 3 tight end and you kind of make that the tiebreaker. But yeah, that's my case. I totally agree with your case. I see what you're saying that Marvin could honestly help him. It would definitely will help the total offense. And, I think he will finish over 10.7 points per game. I just don't know if it'll be more than Mark Andrews and Kincaid at the end of the day.
All right. And I totally get that. But when Kyler was back in 11 straight weeks, Trey McBride had over 5 targets in those. And a lot of those weeks were 14, 9, 9, 9, 11, 8, 7, 6. So he was definitely getting fed a lot in that offense, and not much has changed instead. Obviously, bringing in an elite wide receiver that's going to help open up Trey McBride. But 11 straight weeks of 5+ targets. I love that for a tight end. And that was to finish out the last 11 weeks. He finished out the season with 5 or more targets.
Yeah, and that was essentially when Kyler came back. So he's a target machine. He's going to be awesome. He's a PPR merchant. I love him. I do think that he is the wide receiver two in that offense. So he's an awesome piece to have for fantasy. Not going to argue with that at all. Love the player. And yeah, I think we kind of pled our case with this one. Anything else you want to say before we go on to our 3B or number four?
Let's move on.
All right, let's go on to our tight end four or our 3B, just ranked right next to Trey McBride, but that is Mark Andrews of the Ravens. He's my tight end four, Stores' tight end four, the NFL Seekers tight end four, the consensus tight end four. We're all pretty spot on, locked in on this one. He averaged 13.5 points per game last year, and that's, really reliable. He did have that injury, and that is always a little bit scary with Mark Andrews. But like I said, I do see him as the wide receiver one in this Ravens offense. I really do. I see him as a focal point, almost Travis Kelce of this offense, and the MVP at quarterback. So I do think he's going to have a great season coming back from injury. The points per game last year was awesome, and it's kind of been like that forever. So I do expect 13, 14 points per game for Mark Andrews again. And yeah, I do think that the value going 24 picks behind Laporta, I do think that's incredible. I would personally prefer to go with a more premium position where Laporta's going, and then just take a Mark Andrews or a Kincaid or a McBride just a little bit later. So that is my case with Mark Andrews. Love the player, superstar tight end, been around forever. Everyone's kind of locked in at him as a four, though. So
Oh, 100%. And yeah, at his value right now, it's incredible value. The only thing you're betting on right now with Mark Andrews is can he play a full season? Is he going to stay healthy? Obviously, he hasn't had a full season since 2021, and that was his breakout tight end one season where he had 1,300 yards and 9 touchdowns. And now in back-to-back seasons, he has not played a full season yet. But yeah, last year only playing 10 games, he was fantastic in the games that he played with 544 yards, 12.1 average depth of target, and 6 touchdowns. So when he's on the field, he is productive, and he is, a guy that Lamar Jackson is constantly looking at, and really is probably, the best wide receiver in that room. I put him over Zay Flowers. I would definitely expect Lamar to feed him a little bit more than Zay. But yeah, I mean, you're just banking on health, and if history, repeats itself, usually after an injured season, you do come back and play a full season. So, if history's on our side, Mark Andrews should be good, and he should pay off his value.
absolutely. And I think the discussion with him's pretty cut and dry, pretty simple. We know what we're going to get with him, and it is an injury gamble with him. But I do think it's great value that might be factored into his ADP. And he really is a great, great receiving option. And he's going to rack up the catches with Lamar. They got a great connection, the touchdowns. I love it. People might be scared of Isaiah Likely. I'm not worried about Isaiah Likely or really anyone taking anything from the wide receiver one of this Ravens offense. But let's go on to the last guy tied into this tier of three players that we have, our 3C, if you will, or our tight end five due to tiebreakers. That is Mr. Dalton Kincaid. My tight end three. I'm tempted to move him up even higher. I absolutely love the guy. Stores is tight end five. The consensus ADP tight end five. Our NFL Seekers tight end five or 3C. And man, Dalton Kincaid, one of my favorite players ever coming out of the draft. Honestly, I might have some bias. I will hold my hand up. I am from Utah. I did watch this kid every single game, had season tickets, and watched this guy just absolutely ball his season year. I compared him to Travis Kelce coming out, and I'm just going to stand on that with my, evaluations coming into fantasy. We saw it last year as a rookie. He was awesome. He really just has a feel for the game. He gets open. He's a great receiver. He looks like a receiver. And I mean, my take for Dalton Kincaid and why I have him at three is I do think he is the wide receiver one for the Bills. They lose Gabe Davis, you lose Stephon Diggs. That's a lot of targets leaving. You bring in, like Curtis Samuel, Keon Coleman. You got Khalil Shakir there. No one I'm really nervous that is going to take too much away from Dalton Kincaid. And Josh Allen proved that he does target Kincaid. He likes him. He trusts him. He's going to, feed him. He's going to rack up some big PPR games where he catches a lot of, you know, balls close to the line of scrimmage. He'll have some touchdowns. I do think that's something else. He's going to have a boost in touchdowns. It's not really being projected. He didn't have the most last year, being implemented as a rookie. So I do think he has just a lot of upside, maybe the most upside of any of these tight ends for touchdown upside. So I am calling my shot on Dalton Kincaid. I fully acknowledge it. I am high on him. I love the player. Call me biased, call me whatever it is, but I am going to call my shot on Dalton Kincaid this year. He is going later than all these guys we've talked about, and I just love the value. So I'm just going to be smashing Dalton Kincaid picks all year.
No, I love it. And, I love Dalton Kincaid, man. I mean, me and the kids share the exact same birthday, 10/18/99, baby, as I'm looking at it right now. So, you got to respect that.
Beautiful.
But, Dalton Kincaid, I'm definitely a believer like you are. It was a little frustrating from a fantasy standpoint last year with him because, I mean, as I'm looking at his game log, you have those 7 receptions, 8 targets, 84 yards. And then the next week it's, 0 receptions on 2 targets for 0 yards. And then the next, after that was one reception on 2 targets for 7 yards. And then after that, it was 4 receptions for 87 yards. And so it was very inconsistent, but it was a very weird offense where Stephon Diggs was a drama queen. Gabe Davis, you never knew if he was going to have that breakout week. But, the last 2 games of the season definitely showed some promise for Dalton Kincaid. It looked like, Josh Allen was finally getting out of that toxicity and started targeting, who we wanted to without Stephon Diggs just, not caring what Stephon Diggs was crying about. And so, yeah, I think going into this year, he is, kind of the veteran in that room. He is the one with the chemistry with Josh Allen. And so, obviously you bring in a Keon Coleman, who's a rookie. You bring in Curtis Samuel, first year in Buffalo, doesn't have that chemistry with Josh Allen. And I think, him and Josh Allen kind of gained that trust throughout the year. And I think he's going to be his go-to guy. And I love you calling your shot on, saying he is the best wide receiver. He's going to he's going to lead the team in targets. And I love that. I'd love to see Dalton Kincaid used how, Travis Kelce's been used with Mahomes over the last few years. I feel like Josh Allen so desperately needed that. And, they are creative. I mean, the Bills have a good offensive coordinator. They can do this kind of stuff, and they have the player to do it now. So coming into year 2, I do expect big strides forward for Dalton Kincaid. And, at his ADP right now, he's an absolute steal.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, at his ADP, I'm absolutely loving it. I think he has a upside to be a PPR target machine this year and get a lot more targets than he did last year, a lot more catches. If you have that full point PPR league, I think he only had 9.4 points per game last year, just with Stephon leaving, with Davis leaving. I just think it's so easy to project this boom for Dalton Kincaid. I'm really just projecting a big boom. I think he drastically outperforms his fantasy production last year. I truly think Dalton Kincaid he'll just see a significant amount of target volume in one of the best offenses in the NFL. And at the end of the day, I'm going to bet on him. I'm going to call my shot on that because I do really trust this Bills offense. I love Josh Allen. I'm also guilty of being high on Josh Allen. So this could be a homer pick. I totally acknowledge it. I am very high compared to ADP, but I will call my shot. I think the red zone production could be a big spike, and I think he could definitely hit his upside. And I think the upside is really the craziest of any of these tight ends. Maybe I really just love him, compared him to Kelce. So I just love the player.
Yeah, and like, you just said it perfectly, but like all of his stats, like there's only room to go up. I feel like he was very underwhelming last year just with how the Bills used him. And in certain games where he was just, completely irrelevant and it wasn't even getting looked at. So it's like it can only go up for Dalton Kincaid, and that's the exciting point.
Absolutely. And with that, let's go on to our tight end 6, Mr. George Kittle, the one and the only 49ers tight end, the consensus ADP tight end 8. He's my tight end 8. Stores his tight end 6, so he comes in as the NFL Seekers tight end 6, 12.7 points per game last year. I'll let you talk about him first.
Just, George Kittle is kind of an interesting conversation because he can literally win you a league because he is, when you're putting him up there with, he is a top tight end in this league from what he does from just, the standpoint of being a tight end. I mean, last year, you know, we're looking at 1,000, yards, on 90 targets and 65 receptions and 6 touchdowns, which was a little bit of a dip last year in touchdowns from 2022 when I did have him on my fantasy team. And I loved it. Maybe there's a little bit of bias coming out of there for me because I was there for those 11 touchdowns. And but with George Kittle, and again, I always say this in fantasy, you're going to get those boom weeks. You're going to get those weeks where he can score 3 touchdowns. He can score 2 touchdowns. He gets those long, deep passes, and he's got a really good chemistry with Brock Purdy. And, I feel like that locker room is very toxic right now. You got Brandon Ayuk holding out. And so, if Brandon Ayuk or Debo Samuel is holding out, not playing in the season, is on a different team, I just feel like that bumps George Kittle up even more because he's going to get looked at a ton more. I mean, if Brandon Ayuk is somehow not in that 49ers offense, I think George Kittle, man, I think he could have, potential of being a tight end, being the tight end one, just with, the target share that's going to be dispersed, from Brandon Ayuk not being there. I don't know if that would be the case, but I mean, he could be a 10 touchdown guy again, 1,000, yard guy, no problem. But you're going to get those boom weeks that help you win in fantasy with George Kittle. And he does kind of show up towards the end of the year. I noticed a lot more through his game logs where he has those big breakout games when it comes crunch time, when it comes playoff time.
I really do like what you said about Brandon Ayuk. If you're drafting an underdog right now, if you're drafting in those best ball leagues, far in advance, definitely take your shot on George Kittle because if Brandon Ayuk is traded, he's going to drastically go up in ADP, and then you'll just be literally printing money. So George Kittle is someone in best ball, you drastically move up your rankings, really. But I will kind of be on the opposite side of this one as well, as he is my tight end 8. I still am on consensus with him, so I'm not fading him or anything, just a little bit lower than you. He is such a streaky player, man, in this offense where you've got so many mouths to feed. Christian, Debo, Ayuk, you got first round pick Pearsall coming in with Kittle and a lot more. Juwan Jennings brings in targets. There's a lot of pie to go around in this room. So that'll be interesting. So streaky. There's going to be a lot of boom weeks, and there will be some, really dud weeks. So there will be inconsistency there. It is a little bit scary, but I think out of the ADP, if you're drafting as the tight end 8, I think it's just great value because you will get those boom weeks, and maybe draft a reliable tight end a little bit later, and you can kind of stream tight end. So I do like the pick. So I love the player. He's so fun. One of the best tight ends. One of the top 3 well-rounded tight ends in the NFL. He's so fun. The personality in one of the best offenses in the NFL, if not the best offense. Great connection with Purdy. So a lot of great things you could say about Kittle. He's been doing it for a while as well. So yeah, I definitely do understand why you have him as the 6. He finished as the tight end 5 last year, so that's definitely fair. Even having some streaky weeks, missed a game. So I do think there is I honestly think that tight end 8 is a pretty appropriate ranking for his ADP as well. So yeah, I do like him. And if you're in a league where you need the upside, you push him up your rankings a little bit. Maybe if you're in a full point PPR league, you move him down a little bit, but just because he's not going to get all the targets like some of these other guys. But yeah.
But yeah, and when he gets targets, one thing just to add on George Kittle is he's lethal with the ball in his hands, man. I mean, he averaged 15.7 yards per reception, which is pretty incredible. It's quite a big margin above, the other tight ends that we've been talking about. So he's very dangerous when he gets his catches always count. That's the thing is, George Kittle gets a reception, it could go for 40 yards at any point because he is just one of the most, one of the best, most lethal, guys in the NFL.
Absolutely. That's a great point. He will have those big boom weeks. He can go off for 50 for one week if it's the week that Purdy really favors him. So he'll have the high variance, big boom weeks. I think we did a pretty good job covering our tight end 6. Anything else you want to say on him?
Let's move on to 7, baby.
All right, let's go on to our tight end 7. A very, very polarizing discussion. The most polarizing we'll have all day, but that is Mr. Kyle Pitts, my tight end 6. Stores is tight end 12. The consensus ADP tight end 6. He comes in as the NFL Seekers tight end 7, 8.1 points per game last year. So that is, a little bit silly. That is, I can understand why you have him at 12. Maybe he scars you a little bit. I'll give you my spiel, and then I am interested to see why you have him at 12. But, the Kyle Pitts case, first of all, he's an interesting prospect. Like, he's just a weird conversation in general. He's a year younger than Zay Flowers and Tank Dell, which just sounds silly. So there is obviously a lot of hope and potential still with this player. I think you can pretty safely say he might be the best tight end prospect of all time, right there with Brock Bowers and Rob Gronkowski. He is a freak. He's more of a receiver coming out of Florida. He was the third overall pick for a reason. He is a freak. So I understand why people are still holding on to the hope of Kyle Pitts, and some people are really high on Kyle Pitts. And I think the main thing is he is in a good scheme now with Zach Robinson as the offensive coordinator, no Arthur Smith. He will have a quarterback that's kind of guaranteed to throw for 30 touchdowns, 4,000 yards, probably. That production's got to go somewhere. So I am, going to draft Kyle Pitts at his ADP. I'm not going to fade him. I'm not going to be high on him, but I will be drafting him at his ADP because I think it's appropriate. And I think the upside is pretty big when, Kirk Cousins has produced some good fantasy options in fantasy with TJ Hockenson, Justin Jefferson. I think they could have a similar situation here with him in London. Those 30 touchdowns, 4,000 yards have to go to someone, and they're kind of the two guys in that offense that will, get the targets. So, I do love the prospect. Obviously, I love the situation now, and I do want to hear why you have him at 12. I feel like you might be factoring in Arthur Smith.
No, well, could be a little bit of being burned by Kyle Pitts and just absolutely being in love with the prospect coming out of the draft and being higher on him than almost anyone was. But, I'm kind of in just like a prove it mode. I mean, it's not Kyle Pitts' fault that he's had absolutely terrible quarterback play. And, he's had atrocious offensive coordinators as well and an atrocious head coach with Arthur Smith. But I don't know. I haven't really seen it click. I don't know if Kyle Pitts has that dog in him. I don't know if he's really going to take that big of a leap. I have full faith in Drake London. I mean, I think Drake London's shown me enough to where I can see, I can really see that big step coming forward with just a better quarterback. But Kyle Pitts does scare me a little bit. And a funny thing with Kyle Pitts is as I'm looking at his stats, it looks like he might score 4 touchdowns next year, Dan, because in 2021 he scored 1, in 2022 he scored 2, and in 2023 he scored 3. So, I think we're in for some positive progression with one more touchdown at least, getting us to 4. But yeah, no, it's nothing more than me being a little scared, and I feel more comfortable with other tight ends than I do with Kyle Pitts. There's a few guys that we're going to get into after this that I feel more comfortable. I see their role a little bit more clearly. I know the type of player they are, and I feel like Kyle Pitts obviously is still 23 years young. Going to be 24 going into the season, but it's just kind of a prove it to me. It's kind of like I don't know if I'm going to be drafting him. I'm so scared to draft Kyle Pitts because at this point I don't know if he's a good tight end. I haven't seen it. I saw it, his rookie year, he did show promise, and then I haven't seen it in the last 2 years. And so, I'm just kind of maybe wrongfully putting him at 12, but it's kind of like I need to see it first.
Yeah, me and Stores are really just taking two separate approaches. We have two different views on this one. Stores is looking at his last 2 weeks, seeing that 1.5 points, 4.7 points, and just, finishing 13, tight end 13. And I totally understand that. I personally am just throwing last year out of the window. I am just disregarding Arthur Smith, his
We
existence.
hyped we hyped him up so much last year
Yeah.
with Shane and everything. It was hilarious. Me and Neil we were on the Kyle Pitch train all last year. We thought surely last year was the year. So I just have to throw that off. It's just, it's almost like, being a Chargers fan. You've been burned so many times that you just don't know how to feel. You're just scared off.
Yeah, maybe I am drinking the Kool-Aid. I really might be, but I am kind of in on him. I am thinking that I still love I don't think he's like gone away as a player. I do think he's still a great receiving tight end. I really am just so low on Arthur Smith. I thought he sabotaged that offense, like went out of his way to just sabotage it. So I do think that I really respect Zach Robinson a lot with the Sean McVay route. So I do trust. I will at least give one more chance to Pitts at his ADP, not drafting him higher than it, but I will be drafting him at his ADP because his upside, in my opinion, is a lot larger than the guys that I have behind him, like Evan Engram and Jake Ferguson and George Kittle on a year-long perspective. So I personally am going to draft Kyle Pitts. Stores is on the opposite end of the spectrum, and we really are just completely on the opposite on Kyle Pitts. He's been burned by him. I love the player, and I'm going to give him one last chance. And if he doesn't produce this year, then it's all over. He's cooked.
Yeah, he's not if he doesn't produce this year, he's not a good football player. But yeah, I mean, kind of like you said, with the Jake Ferguson and Evan Ingram, I see the roles, I've seen the receptions, I see, I see it more clearly, and I feel like they're the safer player, and I'm kind of, I'm a player that can burn you so easy with Kyle Pitts. I'm taking the Jake Ferguson route.
And the last thing with Kyle Pitts is I am really high on Kirk Cousins. I do think he produces for fantasy. He'll throw a lot of touchdowns. Kyle Pitts is such a good red zone body. You just throw it up to him. He's just gonna basketball, catch it over somebody. So I am high on the player. And with that, let's just go on to our tight end day, our a pretty interesting discussion here. And kind of a more boring, less polarizing discussion, but that will be Mr. Evan Engram coming as the NFL Seekers consensus tight end 8. He's the consensus ADP tight end 7, my tight end 7, Stores is tight end 10. So a little lower on Evan Engram. 13.5 points per game last year. That is pretty impressive. That is a very solid season. I don't think him and Trevor had the best like connection, which is interesting. I think there's a lot of meat left on the bone actually with this connection. I do think they lose Calvin Ridley. I do think Evan Ingram could have a pretty reliable season and have a really high floor, and he could definitely outpay that ADP of 7. He finishes the tight end 2 last year. I don't know if everyone fully realizes that because his name is Evan Ingram, but I mean, the last 3 weeks of the season, he had
It's
24
incredible.
points, 12 points, 18 points. He had 32 points in week 14, 23. He has boom weeks. He's really reliable as well because he gets a lot of targets in that offense. He has a lot of weeks with over 10 targets. He averages around 8 to 9 targets, and that is awesome. So that offense really runs through Evan Ingram, Christian Kirk, and Travis Etienne, and I see that continuing again. I see him and Trevor continuing that connection again, and I have him at his ADP. I think that's a pretty safe pick, and I think definitely there's some upside, some untapped potential. Obviously, the finishes a tight end 2 last year. I do think there is that type of upside. They lose Calvin Ridley. I don't see why he couldn't have a similar season than last year. So I do think it's an exciting pick. Obviously, had a great season. Hard to project him to not regress, but man, I think he could be still.
This is just such an interesting one. I mean, and like you said, there's 4 games he had where he caught over 10 passes. 3 of them were in the last 5 weeks. It's just it's Evan Ingram, man. I just he was mean for not being a very good tight end for so long, and it's just kind of funny because he really just had a resurgence last year. I mean, 114 receptions for Evan Ingram. It just seems crazy. 963 yards for Evan Ingram is crazy. Obviously, the touchdowns weren't great with 4, but it is kind of an interesting, scary conversation because I do see the targets. I do see it for him. I feel like, Trevor did hyper target him a lot, and there was those weeks where he just really went off. But it does feel like we're in for a little bit of a regression with Evan Ingram just from those really big boom weeks, of one, let's see if as I count, yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4 games of where there was over 10 targets. And in those 4 games, he caught more than 10 targets. So that was incredible. He had some really, really big boom weeks that, helped a lot of people win games and win their leagues, especially at the end of the season. But, from my standpoint, I just don't know if that's sustainable. I don't know if he's going to be able to do that. And I do see just a little bit of that regression. I don't think he's ever been great at scoring touchdowns. I mean, obviously, that one week against Cleveland where he had 11 receptions on 12 targets with 2 touchdowns, was half of his touchdowns in one game this season. So, I am a little bit scared off of that. I like the player. I like the value at where you're getting him to where you don't really have to be so scared. Because, like you said, after Sam Laporta, it seems like these tight ends are kind of all going correctly and add a value at their ADP.
Yeah, I definitely think this is another good value. Stores is projecting him to regress. ESPN is projecting a regress, and so is Fantasy Pros. So everyone is projecting a pretty big regress for Evan Ingram, 40 points less than he had last year on ESPN right now. He had 230 fantasy points last year, which is just awesome. And yeah, I do project like right 195, 200 points. So there will be a regression. Obviously, last year was awesome. But I mean, all they really did was bring in a rookie receiver. If Brian Thomas doesn't click with Trevor immediately, Evan Ingram could have a huge beginning of the season and really boost his value at the beginning of the season. So I do really like the player. I think it's a great value. With that, let's go on to our tight end 9, another kind of similar discussion. Super solid floor, super solid player, solid value. My tight end 9, Stores is tight end 8. The consensus ADP tight end 9 comes as the Seekers tight end 9. I'll let Stores talk about it first. 10.4 points per game last year.
And I, project literally about the exact same thing from Jake Ferguson. I feel like this is a guy, with maybe not the biggest ceiling, but a very high floor of what what you're going to get out of him. And he's going to get targets week in and week out because Dallas did absolutely nothing to add to that wide receiver room. They didn't add anything. It's CeeDee Lamb and it's Jake Ferguson. And then you got aging veteran, who's been around for 20 years and Brandon Cooks. And it's just, it's not much in that receiving room. And Dak likes to hyper target CD, obviously. But he's always been good with his tight ends. Dak has always fed his tight ends. They've always, from Dalton Schultz to played a little bit with Jason Witten, they always got their fair share of targets. And so Jake Ferguson, getting 102 targets last year and catching 71 of those is great fantasy value. And I feel like he's going to be about the same. I feel like we're going to see those 71 receptions, those 760 yards, and those 5 touchdowns. But I think there's just going to be a little slight uptick. I think it's going to be more like 80 receptions for 800 yards and maybe 8 touchdowns. Let's just go 888 right there. I feel like that's kind of what he's destined for. It took a couple weeks for him to get comfortable with Dak this season, but once they got comfortable and they're on the same page, they really took off.
888 would be a huge season for Jake Ferguson. I definitely could see that, though. He is the wide receiver 2 in that offense. I don't see Brandon Cooks out targeting him by the end of the season. I do think he'll be a very productive in that offense. Definitely the second most productive receiver in that offense. So I do like that. You calling your shot on him. I project him at more like 70 catches, 750-ish yards, 5, 6 touchdowns, just where he was at last year. I do like what you said at the top, too. I think it's a kind of a similar analysis. There will be a similar production as last year, just, a little bit of an uptick because he is a little bit more of a focal point in that offense. They lose Michael Gallup and Tony Pollard. So there will be a little bit of an uptick. He has that connection with Dak. He definitely will bring in some touchdowns. He's a big body receiver. So yeah, I really like Jake Ferguson. I liked him as a prospect coming out of Wisconsin. I literally said that he would, I guess we didn't have our podcast, but I did say that he was going to be the 1-for-1 Dalton Schultz replacement. I said he was literally Dalton Schultz coming out of college. And last year, he literally was Dalton Schultz production wise and everything. And I think they're like the same exact player if you want to player comp, if you haven't watched Ferguson too much. I think he's literally Dalton Schultz for this team, just a really solid, reliable security blanket for Dak. And that's got a really high floor in fantasy. If you kind of find yourself needing a high floor tight end, in this range of the draft, I think he's a great value. He finishes as a tight end 9 last year, going as a tight end 9 this year. I think it's a great just value. So I do love the player, super solid. Definitely has a potential for some more touchdowns too. 5 touchdowns last year. I project 6, but I could see a boost. I could see 9, 10 touchdowns. Maybe I could see that world. So there's definitely some upside with him in this, offense with Dak playing MVP football.
Yeah, I mean, Dak threw the ball 590 times last year. So, that it's a pass heavy offense. And like you said, Dak was playing MVP football. He was spreading the ball out a lot. Dak threw for 4,500 yards and 36 touchdowns with 590 pass attempts. So, Jake Ferguson being, kind of the clear-cut wide receiver too, it almost kind of reminds me, of a Sam Laporta, Amon-Ra St. Brown. I feel like it's maybe that type of situation here in Dallas where you got CD and Jake Ferguson. I think you can literally just comp it to the Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta. I feel like obviously Sam Laporta is a little bit, more athletic, better tight end, but it's kind of a similar offense and they're going to be used similarly. And, the target share should be similar to that. So there is room for tremendous upside with Ferguson.
Absolutely. I think there is some room to get that upside, and he has a high floor as well. So definitely a great value as the tight end 9 with Jake Ferguson in that high-powered offense. And with that, let's go on to our tight end 10. If I can find it, there it is. Brock Bowers, rookie out of Georgia for the Vegas Raiders. My tight end 10, Stores is tight end 9. The consensus ADP, tight end 11, and he comes in as the NFL Seekers tight end 10. Super fun discussion. We were both super high on Brock coming out of college. And just love him, the player, I see so many people talking about Michael Mayer, and it's just crazy to me because I don't even think that Brock Powers will be playing the same position as Michael Mayer. I think Michael Mayer will have his tight end spot secured, and I think Brock Bowers will be playing receiver. So I do think that, we're both high on him compared to ADP, and I think that he's just going to be a cheat code because he's listed as a tight end in fantasy, and he's going to be playing receiver. He's going to be the wide receiver too for the Raiders. I'll let you talk about it first.
Yeah, I mean, you just got, we'll just say this right now. Yeah, we're going to be higher than everyone on Brock Bowers because he is the best wide receiver tight end we've ever seen come out of college football. I mean, there's just no reality where I can actually possibly see this guy fail. He came from a pro style offense at Georgia. He gets to slot into the NFL already playing in that pro style offense. Obviously, his quarterback play is not going to be great in Vegas, but I don't really care because I think he is kind of quarterback proof. You have guys like Kyle Pitts, maybe aren't quarterback proof. Brock Bowers is kind of the exception to that. And like you said, this guy's going to be lining up in the slot. He's a mismatch king. They're gonna use him at H back. He's gonna go to the slot. He could play X. He could play Y. It does not matter. You line him up based on your best matchup. Whether that's tight end that week, he'll be the tight end one that week. Whether it's slot, he'll be the slot. Whether they want to line him up at X and put him on the number one corner, he'll probably moss them. But yeah, I mean, me and you are just going to be higher because I don't know if there's a reality where Brock Bowers is really going to fail just because of, the talent specimen he is.
Yeah, I mean, we both said it in our draft analysis that we do personally, the two of us think that he is the best tight end prospect of all time. We got some crap for that comment, honestly, but I think we will stand on it. I think Kyle Pitts is right there with him, with Rob Gronkowski, obviously, and yeah, I mean, the player Brock Bowers, he's gonna be a production freak. He's gonna get the sweeps in the goal line. He might get some rushing touchdowns. I want to play a game with you. I want you to tell me how many catches, yards, and touchdowns you think he ends up with as a rookie.
I'm going to go 70 catches. I'm going to go I'm going to go 8 touchdowns. I think he's going to find his way in the end zone. I'm going to go, yeah, 70 catches, 8 touchdowns. And I'm not going to go super high on yards because it's Gardner Minshew and blanking his name because he's so terrible.
AOC, the starter.
Yeah, Aiden O'Connell, the starter throwing to him. So I think maybe his yards are maybe a little bit limited, but I'm gonna go 750. I think 750.
Okay, that's pretty fair. So ESPN projects him at 650 yards. So you're just 100 yards over. They project him at 57 catches. So you have like 13 more catches projected for him. They project him
Right,
at
baby.
four. They project him at 4 touchdowns. So does Fantasy Pro. So I do think that's where we
Yeah.
have the gap, and that's where we just personally are calling our shot on Bowers because he's gonna walk himself into more than 4 touchdowns. I think the floor, not the floor,
He's
but
he's George Kittle
yeah.
catching the football. So I mean, this guy is electric with yards after catch. He's probably the best yards after catch tight end that's ever came out of college. Just got to throw that out there.
Yeah, I mean, they'll give him sweeps. They'll scheme up touchdowns for him. I think that 5 is a very safe bet for Bowers to get at least 5 touchdowns this year. And so I do agree. They project him at 140, 150 fantasy points. You're projecting him at like 180. I am more closer to that as well. I do think he outperforms what ESPN is projecting. I think he's a great value. I am drafting him over his ADP. I know Aiden O'Connell hurts. I know Gardner Minshew hurts. I really hope it's Gardner Minshew for all Raiders fantasy options, and it's looking like it's not. I hate that. We'll talk about that more in this offseason. I definitely don't want it to be AOC, and that does hurt. But like, the tight ends being drafted around him, David Njoku, loved David Njoku, loved Goddard, loved Dalton Schultz, loved Komet. He's just got higher upside than them. And when I'm drafting my tight end in this range of the draft, I'm gonna go with this rookie receiver. I'm not even calling him a tight end, this rookie weapon that I'm just gonna bet on, even in this Raiders offense. Devontae Adams was able to produce. I think that they'll both be able to produce and have a pretty good offense. And Josh Jacobs is leaving. There's some targets to go around in this offense. I really am high on Bowers' situation. I think everything is just perfect. They place that high investment on him. They're going to use him in creative ways. And I am really, really excited for Bowers.
Yeah, and like you pointed out at the beginning of this conversation, him and Michael Mayer are just really not even the same player. I would say Michael Mayer is more of your, inline blocking tight end, your contested catch tight end. That's kind of more of his game. Where, like you said, Brock Bowers is just a offensive playmaker. You can put him anywhere.
Yeah. And with that, do you want to just go on to our honorable mentions?
Let's do it.
All right, let's start it off with our honorable mentions. We just want to give a quick shout out to our our tight end 11, 12, and 13 because I think there is so much value in this tight end position. I do want to just give them a quick shout out, but our tight end 11, David or TJ Hockenson, a little bit unfortunate. There's some injury news coming out that he probably won't be ready for the beginning of the season. So I do understand why he's so low on ADP right now. He's going as a tight end 13. I could see him even falling further if he gets placed or on the pup list, God forbid, or if he isn't practicing all off season. I do think there is some scares with TJ Hockenson that are scaring me away. But at the same time, I know you rank him really high on your list, and it makes sense. He had 14.6 points per game last year, which was tied with Travis Kelce for the first
Mhm.
most points per game at the tight end position. So that's kind of insane. You're getting a value with the most points per game in the tight end position. You're getting him as a tight end 13 if he's healthy. That's a big, big if, though.
Yeah, if he's healthy, I had him ranked at tight end 7 in this list just because of the type of football player he is. They're built different at Idaho, man. I don't know what they feed their tight ends there, but they got the secret juice in their breakfast there. But yeah, I mean, he's an incredible player. David Njoku really had some boom weeks. It was really incredible to watch him with Joe Flacco just really take off. And then Dallas Goedert, you know, playing with Jalen Hurts there in Philadelphia. Excited to see, the new offense with Kellen Moore. I feel like he'll be a little bit more productive than he was last year. But definitely three guys, if you miss out on these top 10 guys we had ranked, there's good options this year in fantasy. It feels like we're deeper in fantasy for tight ends than normal years.
Absolutely. And I did want to touch on Njoku, our number 11 guy. He's going as a tight end 10, so we're one spot behind. He had 12.6 points per game last year, but at the same time, Flacco fiended David Njoku. Like Watson, I don't have the stats pulled up, but Watson just did not throw to Njoku as much as Flacco did. So Flacco really boosted his production, and it really was just Flacco's, you know, production with him, and Judy could take away some targets, and I didn't see Watson throwing to him as much. So I am a little bit lower on Njoku, and Dallas Goedert only averaged 9.7 points per game last year. I know he had some games where he was hurt. He's going as a tight end 12 ADP, so we're just one spot lower on him as well. High floor player though. Did want to shout him out with the high floor. Dalton Schultz, their tight end 14, got that high floor. So did want to shout out those high floor players just because there are some good values at the very late in your drafts. And then with that, real quick before we get out of here, let's get on to our gems, our dart throws, our late round, maybe even last round of the draft dart throws, our tight ends that we're just not leaving the drafts without.
Yeah, I'm going to get into mine real quick with Luke Musgrave, a guy that, suffered an injury last year, or else we may be even talking about him in the top 10. I mean, it seemed like he was just, he only played in 11 games last year. Seems like he was just starting to really click with Jordan Love, and then unfortunately goes down with an injury. Had 362 yards and only one touchdown. I think he's due for a pretty good regression. Obviously, it's a little bit of a heavy tight end room with Tucker Kraft there, but I do feel like we saw enough from Luke Musgrave to really see that he is the tight end one in Green Bay. And, with that electric offense and Jordan Love playing some incredible football, there's definitely going to be some targets to go around.
I love it. Love the player. Loved him coming out of Oregon State. I'm super excited to see him fully healthy this year with J Love thrown to him. That's going to be super exciting. I love Tucker Kraft as well. He'll throw up another one. I love those Packers tight ends, man. They had a great draft last year. But I'll go on to my dart throw, my sleeper that I'm tossing at the end of the drafts, and that is Hunter Henry this year. He's being drafted as a tight end 19, which is where he finished last year, but he missed 3 games last year. I just think he's a really big part of that offense. He was being fed at the end of the season last year. He had 20 points the last 2 weeks each to end out the season. So I do think that there's some value with Hunter Henry. He's always kind of someone that's just faded for no reason. Everyone's always sleeping on Hunter Henry, and he's just kind of a name that people forget about. So I do think that he is someone that you can take advantage of, someone that you can trust start. Throw that dart and maybe he'll get that touchdown and he will bring in some reception. So I do think the PPR value helps Hunter Henry. Maybe if we wanted to shout out a few more guys, Ben Sinnott, he's going as a tight end 27. I think that's crazy value for someone that I thought had Sam Laporta vibes coming out of college. I will just say it, watching their tapes, I did get similar vibes. When I watched Ben Sinnott, it brought me back to Sam Laporta tape last year out of Iowa. So I do have a feeling about Ben Sinnott. He kind of has a lot to overcome in being that he's got Jaden Daniels thrown to him with Cliff Kingsbury calling it play. So that is unfortunate, but The last two guys I want to shout out, Jonnu Smith for the Dolphins. Kind of weird he's a Dolphin tight end, and then Jelani Woods for the Colts. I think they could have pretty integral roles in their offenses. But anything else?
I'm just gonna throw one more random name out there. This could just, be my bias as a Charger fan, but Hayden Hurst is having a really good connection with Justin Herbert through camp. Obviously, they signed Will Dissly too. Looks to be the inline blocker, but Hayden Hurst maybe a dart throw, maybe a bum. That is yet to be seen, but
He's a
he's
bum.
he's
Stores with the
he's
biggest hot take of all time.
he's worth considering because there is no other tight end that can really catch in that offense or in that offense. I mean, Donald Parham can't stay on the field. Will Dissly is really just honestly a blocker, and then there's got to be somebody to catch. I don't know. He's looked good in practice so far. Just gotta throw that out as my biased Charger fan.
I'll transition to that into my exit hot take. And my exit hot take is that the best tight end for the Chargers will be honestly probably Will Dissly. I think Will Dissly could be a nice dart throw. I think Donald Parham could be a dart throw. I wouldn't mind. Someone I'm staying away from is Hayden Hurst. Literally, watching him last year was one of the grossest watches of my life. I can't believe he still has a job. But yeah, he's the one that I'm going away from. But I respect.
All right, Dan's got an agenda against Hayden Hurst. You got to throw that out there.
Definitely. Definitely. I do like those other tight ends in the chart that the Chargers brought in, though. I actually forgot about Will Dissly when you brought that up. That could be a nice sleeper. And speaking of him, Noah Fant could be someone. There's a lot of fun tight end values, a lot of guys that we talked about this episode, a lot of things we touched on. Anything else you want to say, Source?
Happy 4th of July week. Gotta throw that out here. We're gonna be doing a mock draft sometime this week, as a little 4th of July fun, gotta, we're in the dead season, there's absolutely piss nothing going on. There's no mini camp. We're in the off season. I mean, no one's practicing, so there's no new news, but I think we're due for a mock draft this week, Dan, for a little 4th of July fun.
Definitely. 4th of July mock draft sounds good. Stay tuned because we will have our first ever guest on the NFL Seekers show with our next mock draft. So that'll be super fun talking some fantasy football. But thank you guys for tuning into another fantasy rankings episode. Tune into all of our positional rankings. We finished it now. We've completed the series and we'll definitely be churning out a lot more fantasy and football content this offseason. So like, comment, subscribe for the algorithm, and peace out.
Peace.